Raymond. You're watching RPadTV, and we have an exciting show for you today. Paul had this cool idea to talk about the evolution of fandom and all the toxic fandom that's going on the internet these days. We also have another first. We have Michael Schelling joining us for the first time on RPadTV. Michael is a longtime colleague and friend of ours from the video game business. Michael, how are you today?
Good. Thank you guys for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited. I hope this is the first of many. One of the reasons I wanted to bring you in is not only have you seen fandom from the video game business, but you also have a lot of experience in the comics business, both professionally and both as a fan. So you got to see nerd chats from a different kind of nerd there. But
yeah,
Paul,
different, but really similar in a lot of ways.
Very much so. Very much.
Yeah.
So. Paul, how are things in your neck of the wood?
I'm good. Los Angeles is gearing up for the Olympics and this
World Cup,
probably the World Cup, and I think maybe we have another Super Bowl coming at some point. I don't know. Oh, and Coachella is this weekend, so no one's here.
Yeah,
but didn't they call off some of the? Didn't they call off tonight because of the wind or something like that? I forget.
No, there was some performer last night, and they were like, they can't perform because of the wind, which I don't really understand, because I was like, I don't know anything about this performer, so I was like, are they an acrobat?
It was about the set, I believe, and that it would have been dangerous to the audience.
Okay, well, why? I don't know why they couldn't just perform without them.
Well, maybe
I don't know. I'm old school. Like, I believe in, you
believe in people in a stage, and
I mean, it's nice when they put a little extra effort in, but it's not. I don't know. It's not necessary. It's not. I don't know. I've seen Pink Floyd. I mean, if they could do it,
that says it all.
Yeah. I mean, if I could see Pink Floyd just getting up there and playing, and it would be really, really cool. So,
right.
On the flip side of that, you've also been to a lot of Kiss concerts. So,
no, actually, I never have.
Really?
I've never seen Kiss. What I did see was I watched a Kiss concert on HBO when I was in 5th grade.
Wow.
Which was weird. And the first ever rock concert that I went to was Styx on the Mr. Roboto tour.
Oh,
and it was the part when they were playing theaters and they had people coming out as the robot and doing it So I've seen my fair share of elaborate concerts, but
Yeah.
Excellent.
I've also just seen people get up on stage and tear it up. So
Yeah, absolutely. I like both, and both can be great, but apparently not at Coachella. So
no, apparently not. But that's okay.
So Paul, we had this chat maybe last week over email, and I love this idea that you had talking about toxic fandom and why things are the way they are. So Can you delve into the inspiration behind this chat?
Well, oddly enough, it started because I was recently replaying the Indiana Jones game, and that made me want to rewatch the movies, and not everybody loves the last two, but I like them a lot. And it kind of got me thinking about how there are some people, for reasons that we'll try to explore later, get very, very angry if your opinion doesn't match theirs. If you like something that they hate, they get very angry about it. Or if you hate something they like, they get very, very angry about it. And we all have experience with this because, especially in gaming, I think more than other forms of entertainment, if there's some highly anticipated game and it's coming out on a Tuesday and you didn't like it and your review runs on a Monday, you will spend all day Monday getting hate mail from people over and over and over again. Sometimes rather vile hate mail. I remember one time our friend Abby Heppy wrote a negative review of Metroid Other M, and somebody actually was like, I hope you get cancer.
What?
Yes, this is serious. This is when she was at G4. But here's the thing. Then on Tuesday, the game comes out, and on Wednesday, everybody starts talking about how terrible the game is. Nobody ever apologizes. No one ever comes back to you and says, hey, I'm sorry for what I said. You were right. This game is terrible. They just go on with it. And it struck me that it would be interesting to do a show with people who are emotionally mature, who would be willing to get up and say, hey, it's okay to like things other people don't like, and it's okay to hate things other people like, and to stand with their convictions. I think the guy from Slipknot said something about this once. I wish I could remember the quote, but he was like, people don't stand by their convictions anymore. Like people, like they just don't have the moral turpitude or something. I don't remember what he said, but that's kind of like what I was talking about with you, is that like this idea that like, as I said, there are people who will just flip the fuck out because I said, I don't like Taco Bell.
Right. But even going back to the video game field, the console wars, if you liked, Nintendo, then all the PlayStation people in the forums and stuff would just say, you suck, you're stupid, you have no idea what you're talking about. And it became this little, almost like battle beast. I don't know if you remember those toys.
Right.
But
well, there's a guy we all know, Michael Futter.
Mm-hmm.
He was the news editor at Game Informer's website for a couple of years. And he told me and some other people once that every quarter, Sony and Microsoft would issue what they call like an earnings report.
Yes.
And so he would write a story about it. And no matter, whenever he would do that, like one would come out one day and the other one would come out the next day. And he would always get accused of being biased.
Yes.
And literally he would write a story that said Sony announced in their quarterly report that they sold X amount of PlayStations and X amount of games. And that would be the whole story.
Right.
And he would get accused of having a PlayStation bias.
Right.
And then the next day he would do the same story. Microsoft announced that they sold this many Xboxes and this many games. And he would get accused, obviously not by the same people, but like he would get accused of having an Xbox bias.
Right. So I remember making that joke at G4. I'm like, can you tell me which one of these guys is paying me off? Because I'm not getting the money. So,
Right. Well, G4, I remember this. G4 was accused at one point of having like a pro Xbox bias, and then at one point of having an anti Xbox bias.
Right. So like, which one is it, guys?
Yeah.
Make up your mind. But Michael, we were talking earlier in the week and we brought up forums, which was kind of, I think for us, the original place these nerdy discussions took place. And that was more specialized. You had to go out of your way to find these conversations. And now with social media being what it is now, you can't really escape them. So I wanted to get your take on the evolution of fandom in these nerdy spaces like comics and games.
Based on my experience, I mean, in the the earlier days of gaming, when you had forums, people were certainly passionate, but sometimes they could make a reasonable argument, and I emphasize the fact that they actually make an argument about what they didn't like, but at the same time painted broad enough a brush to just say, well, the whole game sucks now. Perfect example. I met you guys, I think, way back in the SSI days.
Yeah.
And when I guess Mindscape and SSI published Silent Hunter 2, the U-boat sim game, they couldn't use the Nazi insignia, so instead they used the Iron Cross. And when you go into the forums, you would see these hardcore war guys be like, "This is a travesty. This should be a swastika." Blah blah blah. Not saying that they were pro-Nazi or any of that stuff. They were just sticklers for historical accuracy. But kind of moving forward to now, you have the added layer of the kind of keyboard warrior mentality. You have the trolls and pardon my language, shit posters who don't necessarily even have a horse in the race, but it's literally kind of a game of one-upsmanship. How can I be more insulting than the last guy?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think social media as it exists now is not a place for reasoned discourse. And I mean, that's probably stating the obvious. But when you press somebody, it's like, hey, teach me something. What don't you like about it? And if you're, and God forbid if you come up with the newest hot button topic, it's woke. All right, well, I know what I understand is, what that term means. What do you think it means? And, these people, they stand on business, and there's nothing you can't convince them otherwise. So it's like, all right, man, whatever. I in fact, I'll keep a lookout, for you at the next midnight release party where you're going to buy the same game that you're trashing so, ardently.
This is interesting. You brought up a point that in the forum and IRC days, people would make arguments instead of just saying something, this is what I think you're wrong. Now, were people in the internet more civil back then because it was still mostly nerds, not really a mainstream thing? Or is it you said something like social media today isn't meant to foster discussion, which is intentional, I believe, because it's all about clicking and engagement.
Right.
So is it
right.
were the people on the internet in the 90s, or is it just the apparatus, or is it both?
Well, I think the forums actually kind of started to to have discussions about things. It didn't seem as driven by vitriol back then, but now it really just seems like hate for the sake of hate, or saying something that is, rage baiting or whatever, just to kind of, I explained it to somebody once. I said, it's like the equivalent of being bivouacked in an area and having a grenade and strolling by a tent and just rolling the grenade in and keep walking. It's like, well, nothing to see here. What are those guys all up in arms about?
Yeah. But Paul, what do you think? Is it the society or is it the apparatus or both?
First of all, there's people that just do it to be contrarian. And there are people who do it because they can make money at it. And I think that's one of the big things that you didn't have in the forum days, is now you have this sort of industry of people that shit post all the time and know they can make money at it, and they do it. But this kind of stuff I feel like it's been going on for the longest time. It's just been amplified by first the internet and then social media. I was at a music magazine, and this is like early mid 90s, and I wrote some music reviews, and people would sometimes get angry at me. And there was one guy in particular who threatened to cut my balls off. But here's the difference. Okay, so this is a magazine. We had a letters page. When that letter came in, everybody was like, we're not running this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, on like a lot of like social media and the forum, these things are not monitored. So like somebody could post, like I could do a review of some music album today, and somebody could post on Twitter or whatever, I'm going to cut your balls off, and nobody can stop them.
Right.
And so, you have to keep that stuff in mind.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the good and bad part about the internet, is that it gave people a way to have their voices heard, but it also gave people who should really shut the fuck up get hurt as well.
Well, yeah, but again, kind of the keyboard warrior mentality, that anonymity that the current internet and social media gives them, is what, that's what they rely upon, because they can say whatever they want to say, and nobody's going to find them or any of that other kind of stuff. And like I said, the more people that they piss off, they either feel better about themselves or they make more money. And Paul brings up a great point. It's, social media, especially in kind of these geek and nerd spaces, it's monetized outrage.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, you're seeing that also in politics now too, in political things. And in fact, I don't wish I could remember who said it, but somebody said recently, like, you can tell which political commentators were pro Gamergate, and who learned and they've also talked about, like, Steve Bannon has talked about basically Gamergate as a model for, like, political discourse and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And he at the time he owned Breitbart, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
or he worked for. Yeah.
yeah, I had a encounter with Breitbart when I was at DC, and it involved a Superman story, where the story there's a moment in the story where Superman is saving a bunch of people who, I think it was implied that they were migrants, they were immigrants from another country, from the typical kind of Billy Joe gun rack who just got laid off, and he's got his gun, and he's going to go make himself feel better. And when that happened, Breitbart picked it up, and there was another incident where Superman had lost his powers, and he was kind of more that hero of the people. And there was a police department that was possessed by an alien or something, and he led a popular revolt against this police department. So that kind of spiked. And those are people that, again, in the interest of engagement, commentary, monetization, will run that and put their own narrative on it without knowing actually anything about about the actual character itself.
Right.
You
I
know,
love Paul's point about monetization, because I don't think that's something I weighted enough.
hmm,
One of the things I loved about the forum and IRC days is that people were genuinely interested to learn more, whether it jived with their opinion or not. So the exchange of ideas seemed more genuine. Maybe I'm
right.
being a bit naive there, but there weren't as many trolls as there seems to be these days. And again, I could very well be being naive about it, but since you can monetize these things now, it pays to have controversial takes just for engagement and clicks and all that. So there,
Mhm.
that genuine curiosity is kind of, I'm sure it's still there, but it's not, it doesn't pay. So
Well, it doesn't pay, and it's harder to parse out. I mean, you've been in, social media posts, and you've read comments, and it's a genuine challenge to find somebody that kind of comes with a mature, perspective or question or anything like that, without them, catching hell from a bunch of people who, again, are there to do nothing else but, try to annoy people.
So I wanted to get both of your guys' takes, since you've both worked in different spaces as well as video games. Michael, you being in the comics business as well as gaming. Paul, you wrote, as you mentioned, you did a lot of music reviews. You were a music critic for a long time. Was the video game space ahead of other entertainment spaces in terms of fandom and using the internet as a tool? Because in my experience, it always seems like gaming was at the forefront of nerdiness. I don't know if that's true or not, but how is it in the music space, Paul, in comparison?
I gotta tell you, I don't really know, because I've always tried to avoid these kinds of places. Like, I don't go to forums, you know what I mean? Like when there's like these big gaming forums that, like, I can't even remember the names of them that people used to
Gaff.
go. Yeah, like
Mhm.
NeoGAF. Like, I never really went to them because all I ever heard from people about them was how terrible they were. So I was like, why would like, I don't want to go there and read like, oh, this guy's shitty, blah blah blah. Like, I don't, the first rule of the internet, everybody always says, is don't read the comments. I don't. I don't
Right,
care.
but you also have
Yeah.
you have a misunderstanding of what Gaff was because of what people said. Gaff actually had some really intelligent
Oh,
conversations.
I know that. I know that. I just was like, but for me, it was like I could spend like an hour going through that, or I could spend an hour playing a video game. I'd rather play a video game. You
That's
know.
fair. But how about in the music space? Like you mentioned, getting letters in the magazine days. Where was the internet as active for music fans, or even then? That I guess it would be more
I
specific. It would be
I
band to
don't
band.
I don't remember I don't remember it being the same for music. Like, I don't remember people like getting so bent out of like shape if I mean, like, that guy who said he wanted to cut my balls off was sort of an anomaly in all this. like people would disagree, but like they wouldn't get angry at you. But you know what I mean? Like they didn't hate you, they hated your opinion. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like
You
I
didn't
don't
have to,
remember like,
worry about any personal attacks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like nobody was ever really worried that this guy was going to show up at the office and with the scissors and be like, all right, I'm here to cut your balls off. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Well, let's look at some divisive artists. Well, I mean, you're a big Metallica fan. People have strong opinions about them as
right.
people, or even in Lars's case, in terms of talent. I mean, do you see a big divide there of people arguing if they don't like Metallica, then like you Metallica fans suck. Like these guys that are terrible.
I mean, I think everybody's fandom gets attacked by somebody to some extent, and I think that you know, people get into discussions about, you know, this is bad and this is good and you know, whatever. But I don't see nearly as much of the sort of butt hurt stuff.
Hmm.
You know, like if you like okay, so Metallica did an album with Lou Reed called Lulu. A lot of people really didn't like that album. I do. If I express an appreciation for that album, nobody gets super pissed at me. Nobody gets butt hurt at me. You know, or if somebody says they really love the new album, other people don't get angry and be like, no, it sucks. It's not Master of Puppets, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. There's something about gaming and comics, I think, to a slightly but still strong sense that there's people make it way more personal than they should.
Right.
Like, because I also don't see people doing this with as much with television shows or to lesser extent movies. Like I've never seen anybody get super angry if you say you love Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Like they make goof on you or make fun of you and be like, oh, that show's stupid. But like no one's ever like, you should fucking die because you like Kim Kardashian.
What I've seen more in television are fans getting angry at the end, at the last season with Lost and Game of Thrones, shows like that. Fans that love the first seasons of the show and then totally turned coat because they didn't like the last season or the last season wasn't as good.
Right. And there definitely are people who, when that happens, will go and make personal attacks against the creators and
yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
But I'll think a lot of the outrage is also bullshit, you know, in the sense of like it being like, I'm not really angry about this. I'm just saying this because I need the clicks. Just this week, there was a lot of conversation, or not that, like last week, I think, whenever the Supergirl trailer came out. Yeah. And there was a lot of attacks on Millie Alcock, who's playing Supergirl. But it all, like everything that I saw, which was in the context of like, can you believe how stupid these people are? All of the negative comments, they seemed fake. Like they seemed like they were like, oh, I don't think she's pretty. I would only stick my penis in her 3 times, not 4 times. And it's like, I am not believing you. This is you're like, you know what I mean? Like,
so that's another thing that we didn't have back in the forum and IRC days. Like, not only do we have professional agitators and trolls, but we also have bots too on social media, which is not a thing back then, which thinking about it in the 90s or early aughts, that just seems preposterous, but it's so prevalent now.
Oh yeah. And you can always kind of tell, because like you'll see like the same 6 comments from like 6 different people, and they all have like, you know, very generic like icons that like, you know, come with the system and are not ones that you make yourself. And like, you know, you're like, okay.
So, Michael, I wanted to get your take from the comic side, because that seems more of a parallel to gaming. You know how you had the PlayStation versus Microsoft. You had Marvel versus DC fandoms there clashing with each other. Was the comics business or the comics fandom, was that similar to gaming, or was gaming ahead of the curve there too?
I think in terms of comics, like I was saying earlier, comics and games have a very similar audience, but I think in a lot of cases where the difference ends is that there are more comic fans who can relate to comics in terms of the source material itself versus somebody saying like, you know, oh my God, I love the Static Shock cartoon. Well, you know that it was actually a comic book and it was called Static,
Right.
you know, but yeah, there is a lot of kind of argument for argument's sake in both environments. You know, I was thinking about what Paul had said about the response to Millie Alcock being in Superman Woman of Tomorrow. It's like, okay, well, if that's your great contribution to civic discourse, you know, go sit down, go take a nap. You know, grown folks are talking. But yeah, where I see it in comics, it kind of revolves around multiple places, not necessarily just publishers, DC, Marvel, but you know, I've never liked this writer. I've never liked this artist. Like,
Right.
you know, I've worked with like a Bryan Michael Bendis. I've worked with a Tom King. I've worked with Scott Snyder. Those guys are talented as hell, and they do excellent work. But you know, the people that like to criticize them are basically people that never would have consumed their content anyway.
Okay.
You know, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. It's like, you know, if you're coming out of the gate, you know, oh, here's another book by this guy. He sucks. I won't read it. Okay, cool. You've made that known. Now move on to something else. But, you know, I do think that, you know, Paul mentioned something earlier. You know, we can have this conversation as mature consumers, gamers, whatever you want to, fans, whatever you want to call us. But again, you know, there are people who engage in this behavior just for the sake of engaging in this behavior, and they really don't have a dog in the fight.
Yeah, despite whatever outward appearances may be. Yeah. But you brought up an interesting point too in comics, is that because, you know, a comic is made by a handful of people, whereas a video game is made by hundreds or even thousands of people, there seems to be more attachment in comics to a particular creator, whether it's a writer or an artist. And if we take someone like Mark Waid, he's written for both Marvel and DC and also independent publishers. So there doesn't seem, you don't have the same like Xbox versus PlayStation argument there, because you're following creators, maybe not necessarily the publisher. Although Paul does hate DC.
Shut up.
Hey, you like what you
don't.
like.
I mean,
he doesn't hate DC. He doesn't.
I mean, one of the things with comic books that kind of relates to this is that it's sort of a tradition for people to get into arguments about comic book characters in a comic book store. Like that's kind of how it started.
Right.
But a lot of times those arguments were not like, fuck you, Thor could do this. They were like, you know, arguments like, you know, like who would win in a fight, this person. Like, and you would have like a discussion. And you know, like I don't see, you know, you don't see that, again, going back to the video game thing, you don't see like people arguing like who would win in a fist fight, like Master Chief or Kratos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is too bad, because it seems like they would, like, I would love it if that was the argument you were having.
I'd love to see that fight, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it would probably be like a Street Fighter add-on, but
yeah. You
know, there is one other thing that I think is worth bringing up, because it's also part of this discussion, which is people who are doing this for political points. And this kind of relates to the money thing, because you will see people, like we've seen recently, for example, like a lot of people who are like, oh, the new Star Trek show sucks because it went woke.
Which is so stupid to me, considering when the original show came out and how diverse the cast was.
Counterintuitive thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, but you also have people doing that even with comics. Like I remember when Civil War happened in Marvel, there were people that were like, oh, look, Captain America isn't siding with the US government, and making a political point And like there are other times when like recently, I think it's oh God, I can't now that I'm talking about Superman's son came out as bisexual.
Oh yeah, well yeah,
and like Fox News just jumped all over that, you know, and
well
like
there's a deeper history behind that, because before Fox News jumped on the fact that John Kent was bisexual, they came at DC because I believe God, what's the guy? David Goyer wrote a story in Action Comics where if I recall it correctly, Superman more or less proclaimed himself a citizen of the world.
That's right. That's right. I
Right.
remember.
So, so there was no more kind of the mantra of truth, justice, and the American way had kind of went away. And
Right.
the usual subjects kind of lost their shit over that.
Yeah.
Once again, when we repositioned Superman, and instead of truth, justice, and the American way, it was truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.
Right.
And, what gets lost in all that is, people don't realize, and I think I'm quoting this directly, that was a construct of the TV series before it migrated to comics.
Yes.
That is correct.
But
the old George Reeves show. Right.
But this is part and parcel of kind of how we absorb information. We have all these tools at our fingertips, but we don't use them. We just say, okay, well, they did this, it makes me mad.
Right. But I mean, that almost reminds me of how there's a large part of the world, particularly in America, that believes Jesus Christ was like a white man with blue eyes. I'm like, not in that part of the world. He was.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are people that, when we talk about topics of like Christian nationalism and whatnot, that's kind of, that's their kind of strike zone.
Superman is a very interesting one, especially right now. He wasn't born here.
Well, and that's always kind of been when people kind of come at you about Superman being woke or whatever gripe they have about it. More often than not, they're not. I don't believe that they're comic book fans. First of all, I don't believe they've read any of the comics. But it's also a fact that in order to be so angry, they skip over the stuff that completely diffuses their argument. At the height of that kind of Superman is woke period, and I think it was right around the James Gunn movie. I would see a lot of controversy and a lot of conversation about it, and I would be a little snarky, and I'd say, well, whatever you do, don't look at the cover of Captain America #1 from 1941. And
Right.
oh, by the way, I hate to harsh your buzz, but Superman was created by two Jewish guys at the height of the Depression.
Right.
One of whom created the character in response to the fact that his father was killed in a robbery. So, and if you really want to kind of put the argument to bed, the first issue is everything that happens in that issue, people would consider now social justice warrior bullshit.
Right.
And yet, here we are.
Let's talk about two characters that got a lot of shit from conservative media simply because of their skin color. I want to talk about John Henry Irons and Sam Wilson in particular, being when Superman was killed by Doomsday, they had multiple Supermen filling in, one being an African-American man. Sam Wilson took the mantle of Captain America, both in the comics and the movies. And some people absolutely lost their shit that a non-white man was Captain America. I mean, what did you think of the fandom? Was it really the fandom, or was it just the larger media making a bigger deal out of this than it actually was?
I think it was a little bit of everything because, I can certainly recall people, obviously being the prevailing culture. I'll borrow from John Ridley. He likes to say that a lot. That, people were upset at not just John Henry Irons, but they were upset about Sam Wilson. They were also upset about speaking of John Ridley, the I Am Batman series where there was a black Batman.
Right.
So but there was equal amount of vitriol among the black community in the sense that why would you put, and particularly this is something I find particularly consistent in the blurred community. It's like, why do we have to blackwash characters? Why can't we have our own characters? And there was I just remember there being equal parts kind of shaking fists on both sides. But I mean, I think that when they actually did the movie Brave New World, they addressed it head on. And at the end of the day, that's probably not going to matter for the people that were upset, because they're not really invested in the characters.
Right. And I guess the most recent example, a lot of people were bent out of shape that the new Severus Snape is black. I'm like, it's a character in a fictional book.
Well, I mean, yeah, and that's like, there's a murderer's row of that, whether it's Severus Snape, whether it's one of the characters in the Hunger Games, whether it was the next Little Mermaid, which,
oh my God.
So, people have their comfort food when they, for a lot of people, Captain America is this blonde-haired, blue-eyed, icon of what America is. But I'll tell you this, and I actually had this conversation with somebody, I don't know if they weren't aware of or what, but in Captain America in particular, there are two incidents where they kind of stick real world events in your face. I'm going to say back in the 70s, right around Watergate, there was a secret empire storyline where Captain America finally faces off against the leader of the secret empire. He pulls his hood off. You never see his face, but the implication is it's Richard Nixon.
Oh,
okay.
Wow.
And then there was a little known Frank Miller Captain America story in Marvel Fanfare, where Steve Rogers Captain America is going up against some kind of homegrown anarchist, and they're burning down a building or something like that, like a community center or something. And he does what Cap does, kicks everybody's butt, gets them out of there safely, and the building's still burning, and he runs back into the building. He says nobody's, and the fireman says something along the lines of, "Hey, there's nobody left in there." And Captain America's response was, as he's running into the building, is like, "No, you're wrong." And he runs out with the American flag and he says, "She's still in there." And I think, it just goes to show that, people, it's tough for people to evolve to the point where what they know of a character may be different may mean something different to someone else.
Michael, I'm so happy you're here for these comics deep cuts. I mean, these are awesome additions to the mix. So I think we've come to the conclusion that the internet became awful for amplifying these things, partially because
are we the first people to make that pronouncement?
No, but I mean, I've never thought about it for this long. I just kind of accepted. I was just kind of along for the ride. But, professional trolling, monetization, the anonymity, and social media being more ubiquitous and less the province of nerds have made the internet terrible. So, Paul, where do we go from here? And can we fix this?
There's one thing that we didn't talk about, and I think is important, and this is something that I think could be addressed to a certain extent.
All right.
Which is that there was a point where parents didn't say no to their kids, or certain parents didn't say no to their kids. They wanted to be friends with their kids. They didn't want to be parents. They didn't want to be disciplinarians. It was, the age of the participation trophy. Everyone's a winner. Everyone's a superstar and all this stuff. And because of that, there's a large number of people who can't handle, as we've been saying, when somebody disagrees with them. They can't handle criticism. They don't like to be told no. And I think, or I hope, that parents coming up are going to look at that and go, oh yeah, we need to like nip that in the bud. Like I'm going, like not, I hope the pendulum doesn't swing too far the other way, mind you. Like there's a sweet spot in there, but like we need to raise kids to understand you're going to make mistakes. Sometimes people are going to disagree with you, and that's okay. That, everyone has a right to their opinion, and maybe it's nonsense. Maybe you disagree with it, but it's okay to not like things that other people like and to like things that other people don't like. I mean, people like to fit in, so that's a little hard, especially when you're young, you really want to fit in. And some people, when they get older, they kind of go, I can't be bothered anymore, but the reality is that everything that you like, there's somebody who's going to dislike it.
For sure.
Like I was thinking about this conversation. I was thinking in preparation for this conversation, I was thinking to myself, like, there's a lot of things that I like that other people don't like. Dark beer, espresso, dark chocolate, free jazz, poetry, the band Primus.
I love all those things. I'm like, what's the problem?
But then, but this is the thing. And then I started thinking about it. I know people who don't like The Simpsons. I know people who don't like Led Zeppelin. I know people who don't like to read. I know people who don't like television. They don't like any movie.
Right.
So, like, no matter what you're into, there's going to be someone who's like, cake, ew, gross. So you can't even like thinking about it, you can't be in line with everybody. Even your best friend is probably going to like something that you don't like at some point.
Yeah. And Paul, to that point, I think that you also can put a finer point on it in the sense that if you're going to engage in any kind of internet discourse, have a better understanding of what the terrain looks like.
Yeah.
Just know that going in. And, if somebody tries to roast you about something, you can either react to it or just say, you know what? All right, cool. I'm just going to keep it pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's been conversations from educators who think that media literacy is something that should be taught in schools and at a much younger age, like so that you have that ability to like, read something that you disagree with and not react emotionally, but to be like, okay,
I agree with that, but also how to sort out, information from disinformation.
Yeah. Well, that's part of that is, how do you tell people like where to go, trust, trust, but verify and like, think about things. Cause one of the things, this is sort of a larger problem is you have just huge number of people, especially post COVID, who, to go back to something Michael said, are what I refer to as the willfully stupid. People who will not listen to facts, will not listen to reason, will not listen to common sense, do not listen to the advice of experts, and will believe these ridiculous conspiracy theories that make absolutely no sense, but because it fits their worldview or what they hope the world is like, they're totally down with that.
Yeah. And that's one thing I have noticed is that there's such, and I don't know if it's born of personal frustration or what, but there has been just such a wholesale embracing of willful ignorance and cognitive dissonance. And I don't, and just an observation, I don't want this to be too kind of overly political or worldview. And I would ask you guys, do you feel like media now works in a way where it's like, well, we'll worry about if it's right later. The goal is to get it first.
That is a cultural problem specifically in America. I don't know how pervasive it is in the rest of the world. I mean, this week we had Dr. Oz, investigating New York for, I believe it was Medicare fraud. And it was because his numbers were off, by a digit instead of, 500,000 cases of possible fraud. He thought it was 5 million, which is a pretty significant difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's an issue there where people are proudly, willfully wrong and very loud about it. But yeah, I do think I agree with Paul that education is where it has to start. So it's pretty much too late for.
Well, it has to start education in the home.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it has to start with the parents and.
Well, let us hope the next generation gets it better, and let us hope that they have clean air and water to learn it in.
No kidding.
So we're going to move on and talk about movies, TV shows, and video games that we love that other people probably don't, or things that are universally praised that weren't for us. But before we get to that, I wanted to check on Paul and see what the latest was on paulsemel.com.
Okay. I didn't prep for this, so I'm just going to look at my.
Well, this is where the improv classes kick in.
Yes. Okay. So a lot of good stuff coming up in the next 2 weeks. One thing I'm especially excited for, to go to things that people don't like, is that one of my favorite poets is Eileen Miles, and they are putting out a book that contains 3 of their old out of print books plus one epic poem, all from like the 1970s. Very excited for that, and I have an interview with them. And then the following week, I have another interesting interview with an author named Andrew Luddington. He's been writing a series of books that's kind of like Indiana Jones meets the Time Machine. And the premise is this guy works for the Smithsonian, and they send him back in time to find artifacts at the moment they disappear from history. So let's say like the last time the Ark of the Covenant was seen was in, 23 BC or something. They send him back, he gets it, and then brings it to the Smithsonian. And of course, there's other people who are trying to stop him, and people are trying to use, to steal from him, from the Smithsonian and stuff like that. So wait, hang on, put this away too soon. The second book in the series, which is called Double Shadow, is out on the 21st, and I am going to have an interview with him about that. The first book was just a lot of fun. It literally was like if Indiana Jones had a time machine, and instead of, finding the Ark of the Covenant in Egypt, like he went back and found it when it was in whatever that city was that disappeared off the face of the earth.
This sounds very cool. I'm excited to read this interview, learn more about it. Go to paulsemel.com for this and other great stories. There's a direct link in the Facebook and YouTube descriptions. Don't forget to follow Michael on Blue Sky. His handle is right under his name there.
A bit misspelled, but
if you'd like to help out RPadTV, consider getting a Proton VPN subscription. You can get up to 64% off by using the link you see here. There's also a direct link in the Facebook and YouTube descriptions as well. I've actually been a Proton subscriber before I started working with them. It's a great way to protect your information, especially when you're using like public internet at a cafe or you're traveling in other countries. It's a great way to keep your connection secure. If you are a big time streamer, it's also a great way to spoof your location and get access to all sorts of content that might not be available in your region. But you can say, oh, hey, I'm in the Netherlands now. So you can watch all kinds of different shows. There's also some great RPadTV merch available on Amazon.com. We have this certified Guapo shirt. We have these I Have Friends Everywhere t-shirt, and we have this Filipino Americans t-shirt. I'm very excited for this one, especially because Olivia Rodrigo's new album is dropping soon. She's actually releasing her album on June 12th, which is when the Philippines declared independence. So very, very proud of her for exposing people to our culture. And also I enjoy her music. She's like a happier Taylor Swift, although this upcoming album is supposed to be very sad, so I might have to eat those words in the future. And so let's talk about different media that we loved that other people's didn't, and also the flip side of that. Michael, why don't we kick off the movies section with your picks? Give us the 2 movies that fit into this example. One you love that other people didn't, and one that many people love that just wasn't for you.
I'm probably going to have to go to the Wayback Machine a little bit because, I don't really go out to movie theaters like I used to. But one movie that I love, and I'd probably say more like nobody knows about, Norman Jewison's version of Rollerball.
Okay.
That was, without knowing it, that was my first introduction to like what the term dystopian meant. It was kind of, the whole idea of like corporations taking over the world, and kind of the concept of the bread and circuses that we would see in Roman times, and, the fight for individualism against the corporate machine were all things that it was weird. It was kind of like, I didn't know I was learning that until way after the fact.
Yeah.
Another movie that people, seem to like that didn't really do anything for me. And, I still catch grief about this, just be honest, Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction didn't do it. Still have not seen, other than the internet clips, still have not seen the movie. Just wasn't my crab leg, man.
Yeah, nothing. It didn't.
Yeah,
I love that phrase. Never heard that. That's awesome.
I thank the comedian Roy Wood Jr. for that. That's where I picked that up.
I'm totally stealing that and using it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Paul, how about your movie picks?
So on the dislike side, one that I never, for some reason, just didn't click with me, but seemed to click with a lot of people is the last couple Toy Story movies. There's one of them, I don't remember which one, where people are like, every guy cries at the end of this one, and I was like, really? Okay. It just didn't do it for me.
Because you're cold-hearted.
Yeah, but the big one that I've never been able to get through it. It's just not my thing. The Godfather. And it's funny because I thought like I was like the only person who didn't like The Godfather. And then there's this very funny scene in Family Guy, and Peter Griffin basically says, I didn't like The Godfather. And everybody in the family is like, what the fuck, dude? Like, and they just come down on him. And it's funny because he makes these like weird but kind of salient points. He's like, it insists upon itself itself.
That one right there.
Stuff. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Gangsters.
Is that when Seth MacFarlane became your guy? Like, he gets me.
No, but it was just, I'm not a big fan of mobsters and like mob stuff. Like I like Goodfellas. Like that's a fun movie for me. But like I never was like, I'm not one of these people who bases my whole life on the movie Scarface. Like, I never got into like Boondock Saints or like any other like,
sure.
I don't know. The mob thing just doesn't like do it for me.
I've never understood why people are so fascinated with mob movies myself.
I don't know.
Maybe it's fun to imagine, for good people to imagine being bad in some cases.
Yeah.
The fantasy aspect of it.
I suppose, yeah.
Did you have a movie you love that other people aren't into?
There's a bunch. I mean, I tend to be somebody who when I get into something, I'm in. And I'm all the way in. Like I literally have every Metallica album, every album by The Cult, every album by REM, like, God knows how many albums by Coltrane and Miles Davis. Star Wars, of course, is a big one, but with that one, it's like for every top movie that somebody hated, they like a different one, and no one can agree on it. I don't even think people.
Right. That's also multi-generational, though, because as you said, one of my favorite lines from you is that Star Wars is different things to different people.
Yeah. And like you can now find people that like hate the original movies and love the prequels and hate the people who hate the prequels and hate the original movies, and they love the new movies, and blah blah blah. But the ones that I would mention are the third X-Men movie. I think it's the weakest of the three, but I think it's a lot better than a lot of the ones that came after it, with the exception of Logan. And I also think that sometimes people hate that one because I think it was Brett Ratner who did it.
Yeah.
And it's funny now because at the time people were so like, ew, we hate Brett Ratner. Why can't they have whatever the original guy was?
Singer?
Yeah, Bryan Singer. And now, of course, everyone's like, ooh, yeah.
We have neither of those guys.
We have yeah. And I mentioned the Indiana Jones movies, which I just watched them and they're very entertaining. But the other one I wanted to highlight was the Matrix movies.
Mm-hmm.
I have my issues with the second and the third ones. I think it could have been condensed into one, but I really like those movies. And I like the comics and I like the anime that they did. I get what, when you make a movie like The Matrix that's so spot on, it's difficult to do anything that comes after it.
Yeah.
Be as good. I mean, I think Empire Strikes Back may be the one exception to that rule.
I'm going to go on a tangent before I get to my movie picks, because you brought up a certain person that I had a Comic-Con story about.
Okay.
I was supposed to do this interview at Comic-Con, and there was no space in the green room, so I'm just sitting at the Marvel booth on the floor in this, roped off area. And then these two guys just start talking to me, and we're just having a nerdy, fun conversation. And all of a sudden, one of them goes, "Hey, man, this is really chill. This is the most fun interview we did, because it wasn't really like an interview." And then I'm like, "Interview? What the fuck are these guys talking about?" It was Bryan Singer and Tom DeSanto, and I just didn't know who they were. And I'm like, "Oh, oops." Well, I guess I botched that interview. But yeah, for the movie, I really enjoy that most people think is bad, and I don't even think it's a good movie. I really like that A-Team movie with Liam Neeson and Bradley Cooper.
Oh yeah.
It's just it's not a good movie, but there are scenes that I just think are so much fun.
See, now that's an interesting thing that I think is sometimes lost to people, is that you can like a thing and accept that it has problems.
Sure.
And accept that it's not good.
Yeah. Every now and then I want a Big Mac. I know it's not a good burger.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking, there was a video I was watching earlier. It was Jimmy Kimmel and somebody else, and they were talking about the fact that people in Brooklyn will go to Pizza Hut and that they think that's an atrocity. How can you go to Pizza Hut when you live in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I get your point, but what if they want Pizza Hut?
Yeah, I mean, I almost think of, it's like how I don't think of Del Taco as Mexican food, but I like Del Taco every now and then. It's not,
if someone in LA, I'm in LA, so I think Michael's here too. Raymond, you lived here. If somebody says I want Mexican food, let's go to Taco Bell. I'm like, huh? But if they say I'm really in a mood for Taco Bell, I want a crunchy gordita Doritos Maximum Supreme burrito, I'm like, okay. I don't want that, but okay, you can have that. I'm not gonna make
the popular movie that does nothing for me. It's Avatar. I understand it's visually impressive and it's doing some amazing technical things, but because I suck at art, visuals were never, the biggest priority for me. That extends to comics as well. I always followed writers over artists because I can't even draw a straight line. That's how bad I am at drawing. But yeah, Avatar, it's visually amazing. The story doesn't do anything for me. The setting doesn't do anything for me. And it's weird. I love James Cameron movies in general, but Avatar.
I'm with you on this one.
I see. I totally see that.
I liked the first movie when I saw it in theaters, and then I tried to watch it again when it was on TV, and I couldn't get
Doesn't
into
work.
it.
Yeah,
And then I tried to watch the
visuals.
second. Yeah, and then I tried to watch the second one, and I couldn't. I got lost after like 20 minutes, and I was like, I don't care anymore, and I just gave up.
Lost in your eyes like Debbie Gibson?
No. But I'm like you, like I mean the Terminator movies, Alien, like you know, I even like The Abyss to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Although kind of drags at times.
That was a long one.
That movie he made where he had like a boat that sank, like in the Alien show. Oh wait, no, that's not him.
Paul, why don't you kick off the TV section and give us your 2 picks?
So my biggies are shows that like people get angry if you're like, how dare you not like them? The Sopranos and Breaking Bad.
Well, The Sopranos, does that go back to your mob?
Yeah, Sopranos goes back to the mob thing to a certain extent. Breaking, I don't know. There's something about prestige television that like it just doesn't like ever hold my interest as much as like other stuff. I mean, I know that Game of Thrones kind of fell into that, but like a lot of the other things, like people will talk about, The White Lotus is so well written and
But I mean, I don't even know what prestige television is. Like, would you consider the Marvel Netflix stuff? You enjoyed those?
No, it's got to be like Succession is one of them, which is another show I couldn't get into.
I mean, we're going off on a little tangent here, but what makes prestige television prestigious?
Usually it has a high caliber actors, high caliber writers, is a serious subject. It's not comedy.
Not on network television.
Not on network television. Yeah, like it's usually on like HBO or AMC or something like that. It's never on Showtime, never on Cinemax.
I mean, there's got to be, I don't know, like Shrinking. Is that prestige TV? It's on Apple TV Plus.
No, because that's a comedy.
Oh, so it can't be a comedy. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's usually not a comedy. And actually it used to be to a certain extent on network television because The West Wing was like a very serious show. And that would constitute that never.
Oh, I mean, I like that show just because I like Sorkin's writing. I just like dense writing. Him and Aaron Sorkin and Kevin Smith, who for the longest time I called like idiot Aaron Sorkin. I love Kevin Smith though. I think
it's funny that you bring Kevin Smith up because during this whole conversation, one thing that's been replaying in the back of my head is that scene at the end of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where they get the list of everybody who badmouthed them. They get on a plane and they just go to their houses and just beat the shit out of them. And it's like one's a little kid and one's a priest. And so
are you Magnolia fan 85?
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Yeah. And then anyway, as for the TV that I like that other people don't like, although this one is a little weird because people do like it because it's television, and if people don't like it, it doesn't last, is NCIS. Some people just absolutely hate that show. They're like, it's a show for old people and it's a show for this. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. It's fun. I have fun.
People think it's a show for old people? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. People think it's like, people literally think that like the only people that watch NCIS are over the age of 45.
It's like a Matlock for a lot of people.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like a Murder, She Wrote Matlock kind of thing. Except that the one thing they've always seen is that it doesn't actually fall for like Matlock literally did only back in the old Matlock, not the new one. Literally did have like a median age of like 78, whereas NCIS is like multi-generational. And then the other show that I would point out, which again, some people do love it, is The Simpsons. I love The Simpsons. And what I find funny about the hate of The Simpsons is that people always say, The Simpsons was so much funnier 10 years ago. But in 10 years, they'll say, The Simpsons was really funny 10 years ago. Like, it's like no matter what happens, like it's always old Simpsons are good, new Simpsons are bad until
right. I mean,
nuisances
you
become
hear
hosts.
you hear the same thing about SNL, like humor and taste changes, and it's never like SNL is always the funniest to you personally at the time you're most invested in it, when you're most watching it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that argument annoys me as well. Michael, let's have your TV picks.
For TV shows that I like, I'm not sure there's anything on TV currently that that I like enough for it to be like appointment viewing. Nothing jumps out at me, and I'm kind of on Paul's team, about the concept of prestige television. I think maybe the last show for me that was appointment viewing and that I made a point of being somewhere where I could watch it was Heroes.
Oh wow.
It just kept me intrigued and it kept me engaged. But nowadays I don't really sit down and watch anything for like 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. But like the things that I'm not crazy about are again the prestige television, because in some cases the subject matter just doesn't do it for me. I did try to watch Game of Thrones, but true story, I stopped watching when they killed Ned Stark.
That was episode 9.
When I realized that, oh, this is one of those shows where no one is safe and I can't really get invested in anything because they might get killed. That doesn't check my box, or that's not my crab leg, as I said earlier.
Yes, that is so excellent. So for my TV picks, I'm going with Life's Too Short, starring Warwick Davis, created by Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais. I love those guys from The Office. I love Hello Ladies as well, which is more of a Stephen Merchant thing. But Life's Too Short was probably their least successful one. That was it was panned by critics. It has a better fan rating on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe. But I love Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais, and I love Warwick Davis a lot. And the cameos were hilarious there. Like Liam Neeson coming in saying like, oh, I want to move into improv. And then he starts doing these really bad comedic sketches where like the punchlines like, oh, and it won't work because I've contracted AIDS. And I thought it was just so awkward. Yeah, it had that awkward sense of humor that the British Office had that I love. But yeah, nobody else seemed to like the show, which is a shame because they had a good run that was too short. For the show that people love that wasn't really my thing. I never got into Lost. I tried really hard because almost all of my friends were raving about it. But like, yeah, stupid people on an island. I didn't find Matthew Fox appealing as a leading man. I don't know why, but does he even still do stuff anymore? I haven't seen him in anything since the Speed Racer movie, which is terribly underrated, by the way.
Wow. Okay. We'll have to dive into that sometime.
Sure.
Because I mean, it other than kind of looking like a 725 horsepower acid trip.
That's part of the appeal of it for me.
I guess so. But I mean, maybe, this sounds kind of petty, but bear with me. I'm kind of a purist when it comes to motorsport stuff. So to kind of see, but that said, I've also, I watched the Speed Racer, anime when I was a kid. I watched the movie and I was like, oh, this is kind of like car wrestling. It's like drifting meets car wrestling. I was like, okay, all right, cool.
It's motorized roller derby.
Yeah, that was really about it.
I will kick off the video games section. The game that I loved that didn't get reviewed particularly well. It got average reviews. Didn't sell particularly well. And I got a lot of shit for playing it in the office. This was during the GameSpy days. But I'm going with Britney's Dance Beat for PlayStation 2. It was one of those rhythm dance games. It was developed by Metro, who made Bust a Groove, which was one of my favorite rhythm games on PlayStation 1. So, you know, it was the same exact game mechanic, and it had Britney songs, although you weren't playing as Britney, you were playing as her backup dancers, but she would do these VO scenes every now and then. But yeah, I just Britney was the queen back then. Her music was catchy, and I love that game mechanic. And it was just cool seeing Britney in all her PS2 graphics glory. I use this as an example a lot. It's a game, it's a fantastic game. It's an incredibly successful franchise, and I understand why it's a great game and why people love it. But Halo does absolutely nothing for me. Like I generally prefer fantasy over sci-fi. The setting of Halo, I'm like, yeah, it's not really my thing. But I totally get why it's so popular and why they've sold millions and millions of games, but it's just not a world that I'm interested in. Michael, can I have your game picks?
Well, I think the game that a lot of people seem to like, and I'd probably extend it to two franchises that people, seem to really like that, I'm indifferent about. One of them were the last two God of War games. The other one is like Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yotei. And I've really given some thought to it, and I think it's just the fact that I don't I don't really my gameplay sessions are much shorter, and I want to be able to start and finish something, kind of at my leisure, and I just feel like once I get in, I really got to get in, as opposed to like there's a couple games that I really like that are kind of either off people's radar or they weren't fans of. One of them is you're talking about kind of on the retro tip, Ray, is Siphon Filter.
Oh, yeah.
Siphon Filter, all due respect to Kojima and the MSG franchise, Siphon Filter was the game I always wanted. I wanted a tactical action game without all of the kind of philosophical combat zen that we see in a lot of the Kojima games. Currently I'm playing a lot of, Diablo 4. I like that because again, I can kind of, I don't feel like I've missed anything if I just kind of cut a session short or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's funny, thinking earlier about when we're talking about internet forums and whatnot, I've noticed that those forums and fans in that universe are much more embracing to other people, but the other game that I like that people are really, I think really don't like, and they're almost unforgivable about, is the Mass Effect trilogy. People are still hot about how it ended and and all that stuff. And I'm like, I guess if we're looking for a happy ending, sorry, you didn't get it. If you're, if whether they're all the same ending more or less, whatever, fine. But I remember, and this is going way back for maybe some of the guys who listen to your podcast, Ray. You guys remember when the first Mass Effect was on the cover of Next Gen magazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was like, oh, first thing I was like, yeah, it's an RPG, but it's in space. And when I first kind of was like the switch flipped, I was like, oh, there's going to be more games, and everything I did before in the previous games will matter.
Right. And
that was like, I don't really care about the ending, but I just feel that's what made me feel invested. Watching Morden Solus die was the first time as a grown ass man I ever cried over a video game.
Oh.
I wish BioWare the best of luck in whatever they come up with in this next Mass Effect game. I think they're going to face some stiff competition between Osiris Reborn and what's the other game? There's The Expanse, Osiris Reborn, and then there's the other one that actually the studio was started by the former Mass Effect writer. Started by Drew Karpyshyn. I can't remember the name of the game.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Starfield.
No, I haven't gotten into that one yet. I've tried to watch some gameplay clips, but whatever. But but I can't remember. But those two games, will probably keep me occupied until I kind of see what the response is to the next Mass Effect. And I think another game, one more franchise, I think that people don't really pay a lot of attention to, is the Ace Combat franchise.
Oh wow!
I love the Ace Combat franchise. And it's funny. I've told a lot of people. I think when we kind of really first started working together with the two of you, I believe I was at Signosis still, and I every now and then, I'm looking at something. I'm looking at a YouTube video. I'm like, when am I going to get my next Colony Wars? When am I going to get that? But but just being into those franchises kind of for how I got invested and how I, kind of was just on top of them all the time, where it just made them fun.
It's funny that you brought up Siphon Filter, and the first thing that popped into my head is our friend Sean Damron telling me for the 250th time, hey, I got 32 covers for Siphon Filter 2 or whatever the hell it was back
then.
Paul, why don't you take us home and give us your video game picks?
Okay, before I do, I wanted to say something about Mass Effect. I so hate the way that extra ending came about, the bullying that went involved in that I have never played the game with that ending. I refuse. But anyway, that's just me being.
Wait, which ending are you referring
to?
because
so if you remember, they put the third game out, and people complained about the ending. So then they put out a free DLC that somehow changed the ending. I don't actually know how, but they basically it was kind of like the whole Snyder Cut thing.
Yeah.
Where people were being just such dicks about it, and I was like, no, I refuse to play it with that ending. And in fact, when I found out that they reissued the games in one big package for PlayStation 5, I think, and they were like, oh, and it has the expanded ending, I was like, nope, not gonna play it again.
Not gonna do it.
Not gonna do it. But anyway, to get to the question at hand, I had a little trouble with this one at first, because when I was thinking about games that I don't like that other people like, a lot of the things I came up with were games where I was never going to like them because they're not in a genre that I like. For example, I don't like Tecmo Bowl or Madden or any of those things because I don't like sports games. I don't like games with turn-based combat. So I was never going to like Claire Obscura or Final Fantasy or a lot of things like that. I've been on record today about my dislike of the Mafia and things like that. It's why I didn't like the Scarface games, the Mafia games, or, oh my God, Grand Theft Auto. Oh no. But what I did think of kind of falls into both, which is Dragon Age. I am exactly the opposite with everybody else on Dragon Age, because I didn't like the first game. I loved the second game. I didn't like the third game. And I liked the fourth game.
Interesting.
So, and then as for other things that I did like, one thing that I thought I would mention, and it does have its fans, obviously, because they've made 6 of them now, but people don't seem to talk about it very much, is the Sniper Elite series, which for people who haven't played it, they're World War II stealth action games in which you're you're not just sniping, you're shooting and stabbing and things like that. I don't know. There's something about killing lots of Nazis that I just sort of
why do you
really
enjoy
like. I don't know. I mean, it's not like I'm a bad Jew or anything. I don't know. I just replayed the most recent one, and then literally just played another game. Oh, and then went into Indiana Jones where you're fighting Nazis. So
maybe it's the fact that it's just comforting to know that you're laying waste to people that you have no moral ambiguity about.
Yeah, until they make a game where you kill Swifties. I'm kidding.
Hey.
Joke. I'm joking.
I knew you were trouble, as she once said.
Wow.
So, guys, I'd love to hear your picks for any movies, video games, and TV shows that you love that most people didn't. And the flip side of that, share your thoughts in the comments section. Paul, I wanted to thank you for bringing this idea up. I love this conversation. Michael, I want to thank you for joining us and hope this is the first of many times you'll be hanging out with us on RPadTV. Don't forget to follow these guys on Blue Sky. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And thank you for, we're actually going to take next week off because the end of April and throughout May, there's so many review episodes we have to do that it's going to be kind of silly. So stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching RPadTV. I'm going to make hearts out of thin air like a Saja boy, and we'll see you next time. Bye.